Monica Kelsey from Beyond the Box. We are in the studio today with Pam Stenzel, one of my best friends, and also the person who has been with me the longest through this journey, minus my husband, of course. I have to give him some credit at least. But we were in Cape Town, South Africa together, where we seen the very first baby safe. And on the flight back from Cape Town, South Africa, on a Delta napkin, we hand drew this organization that is now in 22 states across this country. So welcome to Beyond the Box.
Oh, it's so good to be with you and in person right here. It's awesome.
It is so good. It is so good. Well, you had a couple hours drive to get here today.
I did.
So I can't bring you back like once a week for updates or anything like that. But you know, so we were together the very first time that we seen the very first baby set. So let's kind of go back to that time, because I don't think either one of us understood the impact that our lives would have, or the trajectory of our lives from standing at that church in Cape Town, South Africa, where there was a baby safe in the side of the wall, and we were looking at each other going, what in the world is this? And what were your thoughts when we first seen that?
Well, it was kind of, you and I had talked before we even went to South Africa about the whole safe haven law concept, never thinking, you know, the baby safe or anything like that, just because of your own personal story and how much a part of the abandonment was part of that. And really thinking, you know, maybe God has this concept of you really reaching out and, you know, because we had safe haven laws in our country, but no one really knew about them.
Well, and you kind of helped me. You really helped me, not to cut you off and say this, but I learned that I was abandoned as an infant, and the first person I called was you. And I was literally standing in my driveway at my house, trying to navigate through the emotions of learning this. And you were like, you just got to suck it up. I mean, and not so, you know, and not in those words, but it was like, you know, this is what Christ has for you, Monica. You just need to find your lane now and your purpose.
It's redemption. And I think, you know, we're going to talk about that more today, but God has the ability to take very tragic, painful circumstances and redeem them. Mm-hmm. And when you shared that with me, I knew, because I've been involved in the pregnancy help movement and working with women in unintended pregnancies for 30 years, that the safe haven law existed, but there was not enough emphasis. There was not enough, you know, no one knew about it. And it doesn't do any good to have a law that there's no focus on. So I thought, you know, maybe this is before we even got to South Africa. And really South Africa, that trip was the time where we really got to know each other, because I didn't know you that well.
I mean, you just invited me on a trip, and
I know.
Hey, you're going to sleep in the same room with me.
After I did it, I thought, am I going to regret this? I don't know. I just invited her to like really hang with me for 2 weeks and here, and it was such an amazing trip. God had His hand all over that. And the fact that the baby safe was the very last stop, after I already watched you do crazy things like jump off the cliff of a mountain, not knowing how you were going to get back.
That is a whole nother episode, folks. We will talk about that next.
That's crazy. So we're walking in, and both of us are kind of, what is this? Because it said baby on it.
Baby safe.
Yeah. And the pastor telling us that they had so many abandoned babies just right around his own church.
Yeah.
And that some young boys had saw a garbage bag moving and found this little infant, placenta still attached, a little boy. And
that was later named Moses.
Yeah, they named the family that adopted him named him Moses, and we were like, this is amazing. And this was before the Dropbox came out, right? So there was not a lot of awareness anywhere, really, especially in the U.S., of these kinds of things.
Well, in the Dropbox, just to be clear, the Dropbox was the very first reality of infant abandonment in the world, where Pastor Lee from Seoul, South Korea, highlighted abandonment and showed that he put a box in his house. And so that hadn't even been public yet, is what the Dropbox, so what you're talking about.
This is before all of that. I mean, that's why you're like, you know, obviously after that happened and that documentary came out in the U.S. about Pastor Lee, a lot more people, you know, it was in people's minds.
Yeah.
But this was well before that. And so, and I think, well, and you encountered this, Monica, at the very beginning. You know, even though I'm sure your husband was encouraging, I was encouraging, all of us thought you were crazy. So it was kind of one of those things where you're like, Monica, you go do it. And what's so astounding is you did.
Right.
That's what's so amazing. And I don't think people fully understand what you had to go through, especially in those first years, to not give up.
Right.
And to not say, you know what, it's not worth it. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. Maybe I am. Let's just go back to talking nice about safe haven laws and hoping we can educate people enough to be willing to walk into a fire station and look at someone that they probably know,
right,
and hand their in crisis and be able to do that. So it really is a miracle. So it was a privilege for me to be a part from the beginning, and really to just watch your tenaciousness, watch you say, I'm not giving up. There's a reason for this. I'm doing this for these moms. I'm doing this for these babies. And I'm not taking no for an answer. And that's why we are where we are today.
Well, and we've never changed our focus. Our focus has always been on baby first, mom second.
Yeah.
The safe haven law was enacted to save babies from being thrown in dumpsters and trash cans. And so we have to focus on baby first, but mom has always been second to us. And so our focus has never changed. Those are still the top two things that we worry about when we get a call on our hotline. Okay, so we get back from Cape Town, South Africa. I come with this drawing of this basic box on a Delta napkin, take it to a builder, and then he builds me this box, and you see it for the first time. Did you lose your mind? Like, did you what is she thinking? Like, because it was basic. Like, there was no electronics in it. It was a shell of a box that I was taken to the State House to try and get them to understand the concept. It wasn't, hey, this is the box we're going to use. It was, hey, it's going to look something like this. And, people were taking photos of it and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it's on the, the Today Show and stuff like that. And we're like, wow, that box, we probably should have done a little bit more work on it.
We should have made it look prettier. I don't know. Could we have decorated it? I'm not sure. But it was the prototype you were able to actually carry around and bring right in. We couldn't do that today.
No.
And it was fun. A couple of years ago, we had kind of an open house here, and JJ and he put all of the different stages of the boxes out so that we could all kind of see from the beginning and to what it is today. And it was pretty amazing.
It is. It really is. Okay. So we get Indiana, we put the very first baby box in the state of Indiana. And then we put the second baby box in the state of Indiana a few days later. You were at both of them. And then we just kind of waited and started the fight, which has been the fight from the beginning. It's never changed. We're still fighting the same people, the same arguments. Some change a little bit, but most of them still go back to the root cause of adoption. The people who hate adoption or think that children deserve to know their biological parents, they deserve to know their medical history, should trump everything else. And I don't agree with that. I think your right to life trumps everything else. If you can get your information about your biological parents, that's great too. But we should focus on saving the lives of these kids first, instead of worrying about who their parents are or that their biological parents can raise them. And you know that I've been a medic a long time. I've went into many houses and looked at kids in homes and thought it is going to end up really bad for these kids. There are parents out there that should never be parents, and I'm very vocal about that. I've said that from the beginning. And so, people that say that these children deserve to know their heritage, that they should be able to be raised by their biological parents, does that tick you off?
Well, and Monica, the reason that you and I even met, the reason we were together is because of our stories.
Right.
And I had flown into Indiana to speak on behalf of, at the time, Senator Murdoch, who was running for Senate, who said that children who were conceived in rape were planned by God. And of course, people took that and twisted those words to say God planned the rape. And I think when those arguments get made, they forget that there are real people they're talking about behind that. And my biological mother was 15 years old and was raped. She was in foster care at the time, I don't know at the time of the rape, but it's at the time she had me. And I was the poster child for abortion, right? I was the poster child for 15, raped, in foster care. And in the 60s, to be in foster care, was a big deal. Today, it's like, lots of teenagers are in foster care. But in the 60s, there had to be some serious stuff going on at home, right? And so, and I was born in Michigan. And so, the law at the time was that abortion was not legal, even in the case of rape. And so my life was spared. But I've always been grateful to her for not just
Your
my
birth mom.
life, my birth mom, but she gave me my family. So I have this amazing family that I just got to spend some time with in Michigan this weekend. But I'm the oldest of 8 kids, 7 of us adopted. My brother, just younger than me, is the bio one, the real one.
He was an accident.
He was
probably.
an accident. I sent him the birthday card. Dear brother, on your birthday, just want to remind you I was planned. You were an accident. That's how we tease each other. But I mean, just amazing parents. My parents were just amazing human beings, right? And I always knew I was adopted. In fact, I was probably the kid that, because it was such a positive thing, like in my family, like before I went to school, was like, I'm Pam and I'm adopted. Like, I'm really cool. The rest of you are not as cool as I am. And it probably took a few years of elementary school to realize that not everybody in the world thought that was as cool as I happened to think it was, right? And I remember 2 of my brothers are from Korea, and I was probably 4th or 5th grade when my brother Kim came to be with our family. And at the time, with international adoption, you had to, well, now you have to fly to the country to adopt internationally. But at the time, we just went to the airport.
Picked up another child at the airport.
And so I was telling all my friends, we're going to the airport to pick up my brother. Like, doesn't everybody get their brother from the airport? Yeah. And so, well, and in my family, my mom's one of 12, 9 girls and 3 boys. And 6 of the girls had some struggles with fertility and being able to get pregnant. And so there's 89 grandchildren, and almost 30, I think it's 35 to 36 of us are adopted. Which I have seen adoption work for everywhere from infant adoption to international adoption to out of foster care as well. So, that's my background. That's what I know about adoption, and realizing that there's probably 0 way I would be alive today if everybody took the attitude that biological mother needed to raise me. And I love her. I pray for her. She took on all the pain in order to give me my life and my family, and I will forever be grateful. She's a hero to me. But could she have parented me at 15 in foster care in the family situation that she was in? Right. And the answer is probably not. And literally, I have spent my life walking alongside women experiencing that unintended pregnancy, because I firmly believe that what my birth mother needed in that moment of trauma was someone to love her, someone to walk alongside her, someone not to abandon her, and be there for her as she walked through that very, very difficult time.
Do you feel like this is something that you need to do because your birth mother didn't have that? Do you feel at peace with working with them?
I don't know, because unfortunately I never got the opportunity to meet my biological mother. So I don't know who was there for her.
Right.
You were able to meet your birth mother and kind of get the story. But we all know, we've met women who didn't do well after, right. And who struggled. And I've met women who had abortions after having been raped, and their life took a terrible trajectory, and drug use and drinking, and just weren't able to get over that trauma. And then come to find out that was the only child they ever conceived. They were never able to have children. And so one of the things that we do see walking alongside women who experience pregnancy as a result of rape, that no matter what they choose, if they choose life, if they don't choose abortion and they choose to parent, or they choose to make an adoption plan, that process is healing for them. That child becomes healing. And I think the world looks at it like, well, it's going to be a constant reminder of the trauma. The reality is they will always have a reminder of that trauma, child or not.
Right.
The child isn't a constant reminder. And the reality is the child helps them see how God is able to redeem the most traumatic and difficult, painful circumstances in our lives if we let him do that. Or we can just internalize the trauma. So I think what we're seeing with this, first of all, the reality is adoption, is adoption is not this great, wonderful thing, and everybody should be placing their child for adoption. Any more than the Safe Haven Baby Box is this amazing thing, and all women, no matter what's going on, just go bring your baby to the box. No, this is not that. This is an attempt to take very painful crisis and women at probably the lowest point of their life and giving them an option that allows for redemption. Mm-hmm. Adoption isn't a choice for everybody. Parenting is not a choice for everybody, but it's definitely a better choice than the alternative, and that's having putting your baby in a dumpster, putting your baby down, flushing it down a toilet, in the garbage at the convenience store, Walmart, or it's way better than those decisions.
Do you remember, and this was probably, I don't know, back in 2018, 2019, you were still running the hotline, you still were answering every call, and we had worked with a mom to surrender, and then she changed her mind, and this was before she had surrendered. She had changed her mind because her mom said, don't do this, I'll help you, I'll be there for you, what do you need? And then when the child was 2 years old, do you remember this? We got the call back from this exact same mother that mom was no longer helping anymore, and baby went into foster care. And she wanted to place for adoption because she was actually asking if she could surrender this child now under Safe Haven. And that just brought up a whole nother issue of people trying to talk these parents out of placing for adoption. And then 2 years down the road, we deal with a mother that really never wanted to be a parent in the first place.
Right. And making an adoption plan would have been the better point from the beginning.
Right.
And I dealt with that in the pregnancy help movement forever. I had a young girl, I'll never forget it, way back, this would have been in the 90s, when she knew that she wanted to place. She's very mature. It takes a tremendous amount of maturity to make an adoption plan, even an open adoption plan, yes. Right? Because you have to put all of your needs aside and do what's best for someone else. That takes, we live in a culture that's selfish. It's me, I want mine. And it's my, adoption is the opposite of that. It's, I'm going to take on all the pain here to do something best for someone else. So, excuse me.
I can
really
get
it out there. Okay. So I had this young high school student. She was a senior, and she was wanting to place, and I had been counseling with her for a couple of months. And then it was Christmas, and I didn't see her over Christmas. And she came back in January for a counseling session. And I said, how was your Christmas? What'd you get? Mom bought her a high chair, a stroller. My mother, which is grandmother now, bought her all this stuff for the baby. And I'm like, what is she thinking? And I'm like, I need to talk to mom. So I got mom in. And so my problem wasn't birth mom. My problem was grandma. Well, that's my grandchild and all the selfishness. Well, there's nothing you can do at that point. I mean, she was too influenced by her mother, and so chose to parent and didn't choose to place. And literally within 6 months, I got a call from mother, the grandmother, mm-hmm. going, I need you to see this client again because she's not stepping up and taking responsibility, and it's all on me. And I wanted to slap her this way to Sunday. And I'm like, she was getting ready to make the best choice for her. She wanted to be a police officer. She was wanting to go to all these things. And the grandma stepped in. And then when it got to the reality of it, the reality of day-to-day parenting, grandma didn't really want to do that. Right. And it's devastating. And I think the thing is, making an adoption plan, again, isn't for everyone.
Right.
But for some, they want what's best for their child that they know they cannot provide, and they're willing to take on that. Now, an open adoption is great if you can do that,
right? Because
then you get to, meet that family, choose that family, and have ongoing relationship with that family. It's different. You're still not parenting. But it's not the scary way adoption was in the 60s, where babies whisked closed away and nobody knows anything about anyone. And, that can be very traumatizing. But adoption can look, today is a very beautiful thing. And we have so many couples now who can't have children. Infertility is skyrocketing for many reasons. And a lot of it is, delaying childbirth until they're in their 30s, and then all of these reasons why, I think a generation kind of thought, well, I'll get my career, do all of these things. And then when I'm 35, I'll just be able to miraculously have children. And it's like, yeah, life doesn't always work that way.
Well, and you look at adoption and you look at these young girls, and the fact that people are trying to talk them out of doing something that they want to do. That's one of the things that we do at Safe Haven Baby Boxes is we don't talk them out of doing. If they want to do a parenting plan, we're going to support the plan. If they want to do an adoption plan, we're going to support the plan. If they want to surrender, we're going to support the plan. And it's like they're going to choose what's best for them. We should never be telling them what's best for them or what we would do. I hate it when people say, well, I would do this or I wouldn't do this. It's not up to you.
You're not in the situation. And good any of those of you who are therapists or understand counseling, the reality is that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
Right.
You're not supposed to tell someone. You're supposed to help them look at all of the options in front of them. We use a thing called the Ottawa Decision Guide, which is amazing. And it says, what are your options in this particular crisis? And there's 3 options. And this wasn't made for the pregnancy, an unintended pregnancy. It was made for people making end of life decisions with cancer or serious things. But there's 3 options there. And we let her first put the options down. And we say, you need to now look at all of those options and what closely meets your value system. When you dream about your future and the future for your child, what do you want? And which one of these options will get you there?
Right.
And that's why it kind of frustrates me when I hear things like, and we've heard this even from some of the Safe Haven community where, well, she just needed a cell phone and then she made a decision to parent.
That drives me
I'm like,
crazy.
What in the... So she is going to surrender a child because she can't pay her cell phone bill. So you come in and pay her cell phone bill for a month or 2, and now she's perfectly capable of parenting her child.
Well, that brings up a whole nother problem, because how many times is she going to now come back and want somebody to pay this or somebody to pay that, only so that she can parent? And again, we have to look at, well, let's go back to the stats. The Safe Haven movement, they don't care for us because we put out truth. We put out facts. One of the things that they are constantly saying is that when given the option by a first responder, giving them their option. So a woman walks into a fire station and says, hey, I want to surrender my child. They talk her out of it, okay? That's a whole nother show. But they talk her out of it. And then she changes her mind. And they say 26% of women, this is what the other people in the Safe Haven movement say, 26% of women who show up to surrender their child change their mind when given help to parent or safe surrender. I want to know where the stats are. Yeah. Where are the stats that are showing 26% of women walking into fire stations and hospitals where they changed their mind? It's not there. There's no stats. Nobody is keeping stats on that, and it's complete. It's a lie, and that's what just really irritates me is they expect us to put out all of this data and everything that that we have. How many babies, how many drug addicted babies, blah blah blah. But yet when the people who have been around for 25 years put something out, they don't even bat an eye. They just believe it and think that it's true. Yeah, and there's no way 26% of women walk into a fire station wanting to surrender and they leave with their child. And then another thing, when you look at just that part alone, do you really want a woman that walked into a fire station to surrender their child leaving with this child?
No.
It's like this child's going to end up abused or dead.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen because we talked her out of a decision that took her so long to make.
Well, and there's your keywords, took her so long to make. They're assuming that on the spur of the moment, she decided to walk to a fire station.
Yeah.
You and I both know that's not true.
Right.
Whether they talk to us or not, especially Gen Z. Good morning. It's not 2001. Right. Gen Z has done all of their homework. They have looked at everything. And by the time they get to that point, they've made that decision.
Right.
And so it's absolutely, it can't be true. It's not true. In fact, one of the moms we dealt with who did a face-to-face surrender at a hospital, and I'll never forget it. She said she was so nervous about it. And I counseled with her for a good solid 2 months after the surrender because she did she did a little play with, do I come back and get reunification? But she had really, she'd made a huge decision. She took months before to decide. And it she just got so fortunate that the hospital that she chose, that the nurse that she first encountered, because she birthed the child and then walked into the hospital. So this wasn't like right after giving birth, as you think some hospitals are, but she came into the hospital with her days old baby. And the nurse was an adoptive mom. And the nurse knew exactly the right words to say, didn't shame her, didn't try and insinuate at any level that she was a bad person for doing this, but just thanked her and said, this is the most selfless thing, and talked about how much she appreciated the birth mother that had placed her own child for adoption as adoptive mother, how much she loves them, how much she... And I think one of the things these moms always worry about, and it would probably be true of moms who make an adoption plan as well, will my child someday, hate me for what I did?
And that question a lot.
Yeah, and the reality is, adopted children who fully understand what option B would be know that was the most selfless act of love that your biological parent could have done for you, that they loved you so much that they were willing to give you what they did not have to give and want you to have a better life. And it's how any adopted kid, especially, younger than me at this point, cannot feel the unbelievable love that went into that. It's huge. And so I said, no, in fact, one mom I was on the hotline with, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just laying in my bed, she just needed to vent, and I just needed to talk to her. And finally I said, can I just tell you, because I don't insert myself into counseling very often, but once in a while, when it's been a while and it's been kind of a long session and she's dumping a lot, I said, let me just tell you, as an adopted child, how I feel about my birth mom and how she's my hero. And I will forever be grateful for her, and that I've prayed for her since I was a child, that she would find peace and certainly find Jesus, because I would like to spend eternity with her, right? So I could hear the bawling on the other end of the phone. And that's just what she needed to hear. Because these women love their children. They want what's best for them, and know because of whatever crisis is going on in their world, it just can't be them right now.
Right.
And that's why it is hard. It's hard to listen to people who've never been a part of the triad at all, whether adopted a child, whether they were adopted or a birth parent, talk about adoption at all, because it's like you know nothing about what you're talking about. Also hard to hear adoptees talk about all of their trauma and live in their trauma.
So let's talk about that. Let's break that down, because that's one of the things that I get hit on so much on TikTok. Is as much of a broad audience as I have, there are haters that hate adoption. And they are always saying every person that is adopted has trauma. You have trauma, Monica, you just haven't realized it yet, or you're hiding it or whatever. And it's like, hang on a second. You don't know me. You don't know my story. And two, not every adoptee has trauma. And so let's touch on that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a little bit of the millennial into Gen Z. I'm the very top of the Gen X.
And I'm in the middle.
You're right there in the middle of Gen X. We're a different breed, right? So the millennials, which are my children, and then Gen Z now, we have made victimhood like the greatest badge of honor.
Yeah.
So everybody has to find their victimhood, and everybody has to live in their trauma. And it's very wearing on us older people. We're like, get over it. Everybody has trauma. Let me just be clear with you. There is no person on the face of this earth who is going to live life minus trauma. It's going to happen. So the question isn't about your trauma. The question is, how do you deal with it? Right. Do you want to live forever as a victim, live in your victimhood, or do you want to see victory over that trauma? Do you want to see how God could use that trauma to actually do something good with your life? Certainly, my beginnings affected me. There's no question. You can't say that it didn't. It affected the trajectory of my life and what I chose to do with my life and how I chose to walk alongside women experiencing unintended pregnancy. So it was it's not nothing. But to live in it like it's this wound that, it's the inherent wound that you will never heal from. You will forever be, disassociated with your biological parents. Now, I know nothing about my heritage. I know minimal information about my birth mother, who was Irish and English and blonde and blue-eyed, and I didn't turn
That's
out
farthest thing from you.
Yeah, and on the dad side, it just said American. I have no idea what that means. And now I could choose. I mean, if knowing my heritage, my ethnic heritage, was like, if we're gonna play identity politics, like knowing what my ethnicity was like the most important thing in my life. There are technological ways I could find that out. Mm-hmm. I've chosen not to. I chose to open all of my records when I turned 19 in the state of Michigan, sign everything away so that if she wanted to know who I was, that she had permission from me to do that. I opened myself up to meeting her.
And she's never reached
out. And never did that. And I did not personally choose to go further than that, right? And but that's a choice. You
opened the door.
I opened the door for, and part of it was I really wanted to make sure that if there was pain, if she was experiencing pain, and she needed to know that I was okay and that I was grateful to her. She needed to hear me say those words, thank you for my life and for my amazing family, that I wanted to say that to her. I wanted her to hear that. And, so I did all of those things, but I've never really had the desire to find out. And I actually like not knowing. I mean, I get to be whatever. Like, I'm sure I've got more Indian in me than Pocahontas. And so I can claim whatever that. I get a lot of Hispanic. I get a lot of that. They think that that I have some Hispanic heritage. I get Italian because I'm fiery and talk with my hands a lot.
But you don't have red hair.
Yeah. So
you can be who you want.
I can stinking be who I can identify any way you want. So I can be in whatever minority group people want me to be in. I can do all of it. So
and in today's world, that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Like I said, I should have probably gotten some more college money. Well, if I could prove a casino somewhere, there might be money in that if I could get the tribe right. But it's just silly. You sit here and you listen to their arguments.
Yeah.
Like, you deserve to know all of this about your heritage and where you came from, or dead. So that's what you're telling me, that because I don't have my medical history, which was actually the greatest thing going to the doctor. It's like medical history. Don't know. Yep. Thank you. Moving along. Don't have to fill all of that out.
Let's check her for this. Let's check her for this. Let's check her for this because we don't have anything to base it on.
Because we don't know.
Yep.
I mean, that's 1,000 times better.
Yeah.
So, we have the technology with DNA testing and genetic testing now to get all of that information, without having someone tell you it that way. And so I don't understand. It's like, you actually are telling me that death, a dumpster, you being abandoned by the side of the road would have been better, or death by abortion would have been better than me living not knowing my heritage.
Well, and so that brings up another good point. So those are the haters. Those are the haters that have been attacking us from day one. The bastard nation is mm-hmm. I don't. We'll just keep it at that. They actually opened up a website called stopshbbnow.org because we are such a threat to their organization, and the fact that they think that every child deserves to know their heritage and deserves to know their medical information, that they're trying to shut us down. That has been from the beginning. And the further we go, the harder they start coming at us. And now we're dealing with states that are actually almost listening to them, like Connecticut. They have some people from, and is it Yale? I don't even think
it's a research group out of Yale.
Yeah. And so now they're coming on board and stating that, that these children should know this. And I just sit back and I just think, have we lost the focus? Because the Safe Haven Law 25 years ago was enacted to what? to keep babies out of dumpsters. It wasn't for kids to know their heritage. It was to keep babies out of dumpsters. And, baby first, mom second. And now it's like, no, we're putting mom first. We're putting mom first. And something else that really irritates me, and as an adoptee, this just really, really frosts my tail. And I have been criticized for this multiple times by coming out with this opinion. But for these women 50 years ago or 52 years ago, I'm 52, that were promised that these children would never know who they are, that for whatever reason, their family could never know that they placed a child for adoption. And now we are opening their records, just disregarding what we told them 52 years ago, because the child deserves to know who they are. And so now we have kids that are finding these moms, and it is tearing families apart because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that. I think if you want to know who your biological mother is, do what you did. Open the door.
Yep.
Open the door and let the other party come in and say, okay, yes, I do want to, further, find this person. But don't just openly give those records to somebody that you promised 52 years ago that you would not give them away.
Right, 100%. And there was I had to know in my mind, and I couldn't have known this at 14 or 13, right? This is why you wait till you're an adult to make these kinds of decisions. By the time I was 18, 19, I really realized, my mom was in a bit of trauma at that time. And me just barging into her life could very well add to trauma. And so why would I want to? She sacrificed so much for me. Just for my knowledge, I'm going to inflict all this more trauma 18, 19 years later on her. I wasn't going to do that. But I also wanted to bring healing if that's what she needed.
Right.
So what I was able to do was selflessly, again, we have lost all empathy in our culture. We have lost all ability
to
say,
I.
Everything is me. We're so narcissistic. But my mother was selfless. My birth mother was selfless. And I wanted to be selfless. I said, my need to know does not trump her need to not have to go through more trauma.
Right.
So I will open my records. And if it's a healing thing for her to find me, then I want that. But if it's not, then she needs to keep it a secret.
And she didn't. To do with you. It had everything to do with her trying to navigate through what had happened all those years ago.
Correct. And when you think about the fact, I don't know, but if you've got a 15-year-old, that they're calling rape in foster care, that it could have been a family member. It was probably statutory rape at some level, an adult,
right,
with a child. And and obviously the family system wasn't healthy. And so I don't know what her life ended up being like. And you and I know from having worked with women who've gone through that kind of trauma and family trauma, her life may not have gone that well.
Right.
And I think my sense, now she would be 75 or whatever, so she's probably not alive, but I wasn't sure that she would even be alive at that. Do you know what I mean? Just because, their life takes a trajectory that's not always positive. If she didn't get the support she needed, that's one of the reasons why we support women through this, is because we want them to be okay too. Yes, 100% baby. But you can't really help save a baby without helping
saving
mom.
the mom.
You have to.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure these mothers, whether they made an adoption plan or surrendered, get the help they need, because obviously their life is not in a great place.
Right.
And now we want to make sure that they can thrive and that they can move forward and that they can, accomplish their dreams and all of those things as well.
Well, and we've talked to many, many women who have either surrendered or had placed for adoption that says the very thing that, if my family member knows, or if somebody knows, it's going to be devastating for them. And I think, us as a society, I don't think we should be trumping, what she agreed to at the beginning.
It's her story to tell.
Yeah.
It's her story to tell. And we give her lots of opportunity to do that. Even the counseling that's offered after. This isn't, you have to.
This is if you need it.
If you need us, we're
and
here.
You want it.
Exactly right.
Yep.
And we're willing to accommodate whatever that looks like for you when you're ready.
Right. Many adoptees, I think, get overshadowed on the trauma part of the argument, that don't understand what they're talking about because they have lives like ours. I don't have trauma. I grew up in an amazing family with two parents that celebrated 50 years together. They were married for 50, but together for 58. And they were the example that every child deserves to have. And so I think for you and I, when they say every child has trauma, it's like, no. Don't say every. You can say some. You can say some. We'll give you that. We'll give you that. However, you can't put a blanket over every adoptee has trauma because it's just not true.
Right. Well, and probably we have to clarify ongoing trauma.
Right.
And a lot of us, I mean, even you interviewed a young man who was abandoned, and now he's a police detective, right? Yeah, he probably had trauma,
right?
But he didn't have to live in that trauma. It didn't have to define him. My identity is not my trauma.
Right.
My identity is something way more than that. And as a believer in Christ, my identity is in Christ. That's 100% redemption. I love it. Ephesians says that we are all adopted into the family of God, right? So when you make your identity your trauma and just live in it, it's devastating. I don't care what trauma, right, you have, because I said we all have it. We all have trauma. But it's what you do with it and how you I mean, look what you have done. And I think when you titled your book "Blessed to Have Been Abandoned," and I really believe this shows you how you can take very painful circumstances and see something very good come from it. Mm-hmm. The verse in Genesis you like to quote from Joseph when he was talking about, you meant what you meant for evil, but God's going to do something amazing with that, right? And so I think that's the attitude all of us should have, whatever our life circumstances are. And clearly they're not allowing that. They're going to live there. And usually adopted kids have trauma because of everybody around them when they do and they can't get out of it, not because of the inherent thing. And you and I both know as adopted kids, we when we were little, when we were young, we had like visions, didn't you? I mean, like, my birth mother lives in a castle, is actually a princess, and all of this, yep. and I mean, even into your young teen years. And my poor mother, bless her, my adoptive mom, who's a saint. I'm sure there were times in your teenage angst, I did it, where it's like, well, you're not my real mom.
Oh, I said that a few times.
My real mom would let me go out and stay out till 1 a.m. and smoke and drink with that,
Yeah.
It's insanity. It's absolute craziness. And obviously, I think, maturity teaches you that is all a fantasy and life isn't that pretty. And finding your biological parents, probably isn't going to be the fairy tale all the time, because there's trauma.
I remember one time my mom, I was talking to her and I was not a very good teen. I mean, if she ever sits in this podcast room and interviews me, I'm in trouble, like seriously in trouble. But she told me one time, she goes, I thought you were going to end up in jail.
That's great.
Like,
that's awesome.
I was one of those rebellious teens that I knew everything, you knew nothing. Mm-hmm. And I was going to find my biological parents one day. They were going to welcome me with open arms, and I was just going to forget about my adoptive parents. And it's like, being so naive back then, thinking that was actually true. And then getting to meet my biological mother and thinking, she was an amazing person. She really was. But I can't imagine being raised by her. Right. In the situation that she was in. And so I am very blessed, just like you are. I'm very thankful that she chose life for me, but also chose me to give me, the family that I have.
100%.
Yeah.
And, you don't, and I think that's why I'm saying everybody has that. Terry was probably my biological brother, the one that was the bio child, was probably the only one who probably wished he could have said some of those things. And had the same, you know what I mean? When you're younger and you're in rebellion, your parents can do nothing right. No matter whether you birthed the children or not, right? Right. My own children, who I birthed, had their own thoughts about, me occasionally, which is it's the way it is. So I think what some of these adoptees have done is they've taken normal stuff that just kids go through and normal parental issues and then blowing them up out of proportion,
Did you think, though, that when we first started Safe Haven Baby Boxes, that the haters were going to be so bad? Did you really, envision the roadblock after roadblock from these people that just hated what we were doing?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I think just normal people, called normal people.
There's really no normal people.
Can't even imagine that there would be someone who would prefer a dumpster to a child being kept safe, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, the vitriol was a little much for me, and then for some of them, I talk about you being tenacious and never giving up, and you don't, which is a good thing because some of these people, are tenacious. Some of them are protecting their own ideology, but I think some of them are protecting their money.
Mm-hmm.
They're protecting the status quo, the way it is,
the way it's always been,
and so they don't like the success, and I think another thing that some people said to us, I think in the beginning, that's so false. They're like, well, if you make it easy, like somehow this device is making it easy to do a very difficult thing, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
They're like you're just gonna get women every day.
They're gonna be there every
hundreds
year.
of them. Yeah, exactly. It was like, as much as we're so happy that a child didn't end up in a dumpster and gets to have a forever family, and that's all beautiful. It's not that. Women aren't just randomly bringing their baby to a box just because we made it easy for them. It's ridiculous. And again, the concept that the Safe Haven movement has had for the 15 to 20 years prior to Safe Haven Baby Boxes, that she can walk in and look at someone and then they're going to change her, they're going to talk her out of it. And
knowing that is going to keep people away.
100%. And so all we've done is taken that little piece away and given her control over when she reaches out for help. One of our girls still amazes me that I never reached out for help until after the whole surrender process. And when I spoke with her for the first time in the counseling session, I wanted her to tell the story because I realized she'd told no one. This was 100% the first time that she was even telling anyone that she'd been pregnant, delivered, and surrendered.
Which is very common for us.
Yeah. And so I just let her tell the story. And I was so in awe that this young woman was able to deliver a child alone with no help. And then we knew that she had tied off the umbilical cord with shoestrings. And so I just said, you have to tell me, how did you know what to do? I YouTubed it. These moms have done every bit of research.
Smart. They're very smart.
Way before they ever would walk into you.
Yep.
And then the other one, I'll never forget this mom. This was very early on when we only had a couple of boxes in the state of Indiana, and it came from a rural town in Indiana, the call. And this mom had just delivered. I could hear baby, so I knew I had a baby on my hands, and it was middle of the night. And she's like, I'm like, you got to get to a fire station. She could not get to a box. It was too far of a distance. And I said, you can walk in. And I kept telling her, we'll call ahead to make sure they do the right thing. We'll prep them. And then finally that wasn't working. She wasn't wanting to do that. And I'm like, just call 911. Just call 911 and have someone come to you. And that ended our call. And you had to pray that she did it. And found out the next day that mom had walked over a mile to Walmart and then called 911. Because again, it didn't even occur to me. Here I'm telling her just to call 911, right? Realizing that they're going to then come to her house. Right? Yep. Like, hello. And so she goes to Walmart and surrendered, and they did the right thing. The firefighters all did the right thing, and the but police, when you call 911, everybody comes. Like
Yes.
not just one fireman. I mean,
In his personal vehicle.
Yeah, the cavalry was
comes,
there.
yeah.
And she said one of the firefighters she went to high school with.
Yep.
It's a small town, people.
Yep.
You and how people can't understand that this is what we're trying to avoid. And that firefighter will do the right thing and not ever divulge. But it doesn't change the fact that she knows that he knows and he knows that she knows.
Well, and that brings up a good point too, confidentiality versus anonymity. The safe haven movement 25 years ago, they kept saying it's anonymous. It's not anonymous to walk in and face somebody. It is anonymous to not face someone and not talk to anyone. And the only way to do that is through a safety device, which is a baby box.
Yep.
And so that's just one of the things that just really irks me. Confidentiality and anonymity, two different things.
Are two very different things. And people, and honestly, we've done a very poor job of educating first responders and hospital staff overall on the safe haven law. Our experience over these last 7 years have shown that most fire departments that we call, you had a really bad one once, but they don't know what to do. They don't understand the law. They're like, we're what? You have a woman that's going to walk in and hand us a baby. They're absolutely clueless. And so you can just imagine if they have not been trained. And so we passed a bunch of laws without training, without actually doing what needed to be done on the other end. It astounds me.
Yep. And today, because of safe haven baby boxes, and because we recognize that at the very beginning, more firefighters, hospital staff, and police officers are educated on the training of taking in even a surrendered infant being handed to them.
Correct.
More today than what they have ever been trained in the last 25 years.
Yeah. For sure. And the other thing we did, not only did we train the first responders because we're out there and you're hearing about it, but you and I both know that, and people talk about why would you do a press conference, anonymity, and all of these issues, but you and I both know that mom is hanging on every bit of information because she wants to know, she wants to hear. In fact, I had a mom tell me, just flat out tell me that she was watching for, and she'd driven quite a distance for the box, but she was waiting to hear you say, thank you, your baby's healthy and safe, and we've got it from here. That's what she was waiting to hear. And so when nothing is ever said, when the only time press gets involved is when a baby's found in a dumpster, when the only story the general public and these young women ever hear are the horror stories, and they never hear, because no one ever publicizes that there was a surrender. No one ever says, hey, we had a safe surrender of a baby. The baby is healthy. Mom did the right thing. And then every time there's a baby found in a pond or abandoned in a dumpster, they're all like, how come how did they not know? Because that's the only time you ever say anything.
Yeah.
And so we kind of changed that narrative and actually talked about it, and it really gave it was awareness. That's what has to happen. And I'll tell you, one of the letters we got from the Ohio fire chief that was so great. He said they put a box in. We had the blessing, and we asked the media to show up. We tell everybody, not, for the community to know and to thank those who supported it, but also for everyone to know this box is here.
It's available
if you need it. And so this fire chief sent us a message and said that he had gotten a call from a labor and delivery nurse who said a 17-year-old delivered and she had placed for adoption. She made an adoption plan. But she told the story that in the beginning of her pregnancy, she was considering her options and considering abortion. And then she saw the press conference about the baby box. And in her little mind, she was like, you know what? I'm going to keep this a secret, and then I'm going to surrender. Well, she didn't keep it a secret, and Grandma found out. But in the process, she did get the help that she needed.
Yep.
And she was able to make an adoption plan and able to choose the family and have this beautiful outcome. But the reality is the very existence of the box, it didn't even need to be used. The existence of the box at that moment in her life let her know that she had other options of being able to keep her baby safe and do the right thing.
And she did the right thing.
And
She did what was best for her.
100%.
So yeah, it's stories like that that just kind of still bring me hope, you know, because we do deal with the hate. We do have days where it's like, oh gosh, you know, but then you get these kind of stories where this birth mom, you know, researched something, looked at us, and the fact that we say, look at all your options, and they do look at all their options and they choose what's best for them. And we couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it has been a pleasure to interview you, to have you on Beyond the Box with Monica Kelsey, and have you in studio, and just to share your heart, to share your story, and to share our story from the beginning of Safe Haven Baby Boxes. And you know, we're still at this. We're 10 years in right now. Do you think we got another 10 years?
Well, I might be dead, but yeah, we got another 10 years. There's a lot of work to do. You know, there's a lot of places where boxes are not available, and
we need to get them there.
And we need, you know, we got to keep fighting the good fight. And as frustrating as it is in states like Connecticut and Oregon and Nebraska and
New Mexico,
and I live in Florida, and I got to tell you, as frustrating as, because I worked hard, and the year I finally said I'm done, I'm not, you know,
not helping.
It's somebody else needs to take up this battle. It got done, so maybe I just needed to get out of the way as that goes. But Florida finally signed the law, and we're ready. I mean, I've got so many requests now from Florida. We're ready to really make headway there. So. As frustrating as in the down times, you always have to say, you know what, I got to get up and keep fighting. And sometimes we feel like giving up, and you know this better than anyone, but you know what, we get up and we say, you know what, these moms and their babies are worth it. And we're going to get up and fight another day. And St. Mother Teresa said this, and I've carried this with me most of my ministry. God did not call us to be successful. He called us to be faithful. And so if we get up every morning and say, we're going to be faithful to that God's called us to do today, then we can give all the glory to him when it goes well.
We get up, we dress up, and we show up
100%.
every single day.
There you go.
Well, this is Beyond the Box with Monica Kelsey and Pam Stenzel, who has been with Monica Kelsey since the very beginning, and Safe Haven Baby Boxes since the very beginning. And again, it is a pleasure to interview you on Beyond the Box with Monica Kelsey, for people to hear your story, your voice, and what you've done for the last 30 years of your life, which is absolutely amazing. So, all right, you guys will see us in 2 weeks here on Beyond the Box with Monica Kelsey. I'm not sure who's going to be on next, but again, you don't want to miss this. We are interviewing prosecutors. We are interviewing birth moms. I don't know. If you got an idea for a show, send us a message. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week. 2 weeks after today.